Hello, Farmington Community Library. I'm Congresswoman Brenda and I proudly represent Michigan's 14th District. I'm honored to join you today to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On June 23rd, in 1963, in my hometown of Detroit, Michigan, Dr. King delivered an impressive speech during the historic Walk to Freedom. It recognized the 20th anniversary of the Detroit race riots and was one of the largest civil rights demonstrations in our country's history. His speech was an amazing precursor to his famous I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington a month later. As a young black girl growing up on the east side of Detroit, he was more than a public figure and civil rights icon. He was hope. On the third Monday of January each year, we commemorate his life, legacies, and acts of service. From that March on Washington to the Montgomery bus boycott, he mobilized and organized people all over the country. It was because of his efforts and the efforts of countless others that led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Dr. King's words and actions changed all of us for the better. We celebrate every January to ensure that his legacy lives on. As a nation, we have a lot of work to do as we ensure that every person in the United States is treated with dignity and respect. I encourage you to follow in Martin Luther King's footsteps, treat each other with kindness, and continue to create a more equal society. He inspired generations of Americans to serve their communities because no matter how big or small your actions are, know that you can make a difference. Thank you. I hope to see you all soon, and happy Martin Luther King Day.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy Moss, State Senator for Farmington and Farmington Hills, and I want to thank our community library for hosting this virtual program as we celebrate what would have been the 92nd birthday of Dr. King and the legacy of his life's actions. Because of what Dr. King fought and died for, we are stronger, and we know here in our community that diversity is our strength. But each year that we get further and further away from the lifespan of Dr. King, it is even more important to ensure that this holiday is a day on and not a day off, and that his movement stays alive. I didn't live through the civil rights movement that Dr. King led, but it is painfully clear that there's really no such thing as a post-civil rights era. We still live in a civil rights era as racism persists and evolves. Racism has killed and is killing black people, and systemic racism is attacking every district in this state. Racism is attacking the future of the black child who won't have the same educational opportunities just because of the zip code she lives in. Racism is attacking the future of the black teen who could get into the same teenage mischief as his white friend but suffer harsher, longer, life-altering penalties. Racism is attacking the future of black prosperity, and wage and wealth disparities that persist block black upward mobility. Racism is attacking the future of black communities, where Flint's water is poisoned and Detroit's air is polluted. And racism is attacking the future of too many lives that matter. As long as there are disparities in opportunity, a growing gap between the haves and have-nots, schools that need equitable funding and resources, healthcare costs that remain inhumane, prejudice and stereotypes that must be dismantled, we will still live in a civil rights era. The struggle for equality will continue, and we'll push forward together. That's why this holiday is just as relevant in 2021 as it's ever been. And I'm so proud to represent a vibrant community like ours that is ready to take on the work ahead. I'm truly looking forward to continuing to be your partner in the years ahead in the Michigan Senate.
Hello, everyone. State Representative Samantha Steckloff here. I stand at our state capitol, the House of the People, where just 2 weeks prior, people marched with anti-Semitic signs and nooses around African-American dolls. As the most diverse community in Oakland County, I have a call to action. A call to action, as Martin Luther King would say, in a peaceful way. It is up to us to show the world what true diversity means and loving thy neighbor. Thank you.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'm Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter. Today, my hope for the patrons and supporters of the Farmington Community Library is a reflective Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Martin Luther King Day may look a little different this year. Instead of gathering in person to engage and discuss race and equity, many of us will watch celebrations online and engage in these critical dialogues on platforms like Zoom. But I'm grateful that the library has organized a full day of online programming that celebrates the life and legacy of Dr. King. Today's vehicle procession, youth panel discussion, and book discussion all serve to educate our community about race, equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm especially pleased that the local youth from Farmington's Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Acceptance student clubs are engaged and will participate in a panel discussion. Students, thank you for your work. You represent the future, and it's vital that you remain engaged, active participants in these critical conversations. No matter how we celebrate, it's important to reflect on Dr. King's dream and how each of us can make his vision of racial justice and civil rights a reality in Oakland County and around the world. You know, he's not an exception, but rather an example of what we can all be. More loving, courageous, determined advocates of equity in our communities. Recall, as he said, we will not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Speak up. Do what is right. We are in this together. We must all be Oakland together. In Oakland County, we've taken several actions to help realize Dr. King's dream. This year marks the first full term of Rudy Hobbs, the county's first ever black deputy county executive. Our new Equity Council, created by the county's first Chief of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Robin Carter Cooper, is working to ensure we are supporting employees of all backgrounds and providing culturally sensitive service to our residents. Lift every voice and sing. The Black National Anthem sings of faith and hope, imploring us to march on till victory is won. Let it be so.
I'm Farmington Hills Mayor Vicki Barnett, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our city's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Observance. And I want to thank the Farmington Community Library and the Multicultural, Multiracial Community Council for organizing this event. I have a dream. These iconic words have been ringing in my head for over 50 years. I have a dream. Inspirational and aspirational words that stand for freedom, equality, hope, and justice for all. I have a dream. As our nation awakes from the nightmares of the deaths of Rayshard Brooks, Daniel Prude, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and way too many others to name, it is now time for America to move forward and make Dr. King's dream a reality. Farmington and Farmington Hills have led the way on the road to equality through our creation of the Multicultural, Multiracial Community Council and our award-winning and fully accredited police department. Our City Council recognizes that it is our job to make sure that every resident feels valued and included in our community life. It is in this spirit that I ask all of us to come together to make sure we reach out to our neighbors, that we care for those who are struggling during this time of COVID-19, and that we do our best to create a world where freedom truly rings throughout the land.
On behalf of the City of Farmington Council, all of our various commissioners, board members, and committee volunteers, and the dozens of city employees who work so very hard to make our city the exceptional community it is, I bring you greetings. Perseverance. Perseverance fighting injustice. Perseverance supporting human rights. Unflagging perseverance in believing in a dream. A belief that American citizens can be better than we are. On this Martin Luther King Day, having lived through one of the most tumultuous years in our country's history, I believe the legacy that Dr. King left us with, the lessons he taught from the church's pulpit to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, still resonate. While we watched months of demonstrations across the country, we can take pride in our residents who reflected Dr. King's perseverance. We watched our neighbors peacefully, respectfully demonstrating, voicing their support or opposition over various civic concerns. We saw members of different communities come together to talk about issues that have local and national impact on their lives. Many residents use social media platforms to speak out, expressing their ideas for the world to read. But never, not once over this past year, was any of this done from a position of hatred or bigotry or just plain meanness. Certainly, some people were angry, as was their right. However, that never translated into overt hostility like it did in many cities around the country. I don't mean to imply that Dr. King was solely responsible for this non-confrontational behavior. Many public figures preached similar philosophies. He was one of the most prominent, the most articulate to do so. I believe this is the main reason that we have come together today to celebrate his teachings. As the COVID pandemic continues to rage, as businesses suffer, as people are stagnated by job loss, as schools try to adapt to models to constantly changing conditions, with politics bearing heavily on our shoulders, and with all the other challenges we face in 2021, I plan on keeping Dr. King's optimistic dream in mind. I hope you do too. It is a foundation we can come back to when the world feels like it's too much to handle. On this MLK Day, I wish each of you peace of mind and calmness in the midst of the whirlwind. Join as best you can with your family, friends, and neighbors to support causes you believe in and to oppose those you disagree with. Just do it safely and rationally and with a dose of Dr. King's perseverance. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Bridges with the Farmington Hills City Council. Martin Luther King Day is an opportunity for the community to recognize a man who paid the ultimate sacrifice for the cause of social, economic, and racial justice. Not only should we all reflect on what Dr. King meant to the nation, but we should all commit to do what we can to achieve his dream. I am so proud of the Farmington community continued recognition of such an outstanding and historical person who contributes so much to our nation's history. Although COVID-19 has put a damper on our traditional programming for MLK Day, we can still take time in our own way to first think about what Martin Luther King meant to the nation and take time to contribute our time and resources to demonstrate our commitment to what he stood for. COVID-19 has resulted in significant economic hardship for citizens right here in the Farmington community. Please consider a donation to Farmington Cares Food Pantry Program. Farmington Cares is located at 27835 Shiawassee, or you can contact them at 248-882-7800. Thank you and happy Martin Luther King Day.
Hello, I'm Farmington Hills Council Member Valerie Knoll. I want to thank the library for hosting the Dr. King Remembrance event and for putting this video together to help celebrate his contributions. As many of you may know, Dr. King delivered a sermon titled The Drum Major Instinct, which was inspired by Mark 10, verse 43. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. In the sermon, Dr. King said, if you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. And that's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Dr. King also said, You don't have to have a college degree to serve. And he said, you only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And you can be that servant. Dr. King's words remind us of why this day is recognized as a National Day of Service and how we can achieve greatness when we serve others. When we think of service, the first thing that probably comes to mind is volunteering for a nonprofit organization. But service doesn't have to be an organized event. You can serve by doing a kind deed for a neighbor, teaching someone a skill so that they can better their life, or thanking a veteran or a police officer for their service. But the service Dr. King was referring to is even more than that. It is living a life not of selfishness and pride, but having a heart and soul filled with humility and grace so that we can transform our personal relationships and our community. So on this important day and throughout the year, I hope we can remember his thoughts on serving and how we can incorporate them into our life.
Hello, everyone. I am Farmington Hills Police Chief Jeff King, and although it's unfortunate we cannot be together today, I know that nothing will stop this great community from coming together to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King. This day is so special to all of us for a myriad of reasons. Personally, I would have to say it's because of my admiration for Dr. King's tireless love and commitment towards bringing peace and justice to all people. I admire so many of Dr. King's words, his teachings, and his visions, but none more than the dream he had for his children. And that was that one day we will all live in a nation where we will not be judged or judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of one's character. I hope that everyone enjoys this great program planned for today, and that we will all continue to work towards achieving Dr. King's dreams. Thank you.
Greetings to you as we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm Zach Rich, President of the Farmington Public Schools Board of Education. This is a momentous time. Today, we celebrate and reflect on Dr. King's life work, and on Wednesday, our first Black Vice President of the United States will take her oath of office. While we celebrate achievement, we also need to admit there is more to do in our schools and in our community. For those of us who are not people of color, it is not enough just to proclaim that we believe we are not racist. We, individually and as a community, need to work to eliminate systemic racism and become anti-racist in our policies and our practices. You have my vow that this is something I will continue to do. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Greetings. I'm here today to speak to you about the MLK Walk. A few years ago, there were two women that decided to take this upon themselves to start the Martin Luther King March. Those two women did this by themselves with members of the community and decided that this was an important issue and celebration that needed to be had by all. Those two women were Karen Bolson and myself, Angie Smith. Karen Bolson, former school board member, and Angie Smith, current school board member for Farmington Public Schools. This celebration has been important throughout the community for several years. But now, with the tension in this country, the climate of the systemic racism, and the beliefs of others that don't believe that all lives matter or Black lives matter has become evident and important to continue to fight. Dr. King fought for all human rights for the LGBTQ community, the people of color, those that have had issues with systemic racism, as well as dealing with issues with financially being unhealthy and special needs. We have to continue this fight for him, for our own John Lewis, and also Elijah Cummings. With the climate of this community, and as we saw last Wednesday, the Capitol being taken over, we have to continue our fight. Thank you for coming out and celebrating this monumental event, an annual event in Farmington Public Schools and Farmington community, which has grown over the few years from walking from the Caustic Center to Narden Park. That tradition will continue. Not only will it continue there, we are educating our students. And we're taking this even further as we grow throughout the years through our library and through our schools. So on behalf of myself and the great Karen Bolson, Dr. Martin Luther King, happy birthday. And to John Lewis, I'm staying in good trouble. Thank you and have a happy holiday. As always, yours from children, Angie Smith.
Hello, my name is Claudia Heinrich. I'm a newly elected school board trustee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. In 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "I have a dream that my children will grow up in a world where they are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." I want my children to live in that world and my grandchildren to grow up in that world. I want every student in Farmington Public Schools to believe that they are growing up in that world. Dr. Martin Luther King was a great leader in our country, pronouncing racism as a threat to humanity, demanding equal access to education, housing, and employment. But 52 years after his death, we have yet to realize that dream. Dr. King's legacy challenges us to continue the work he started in making that dream come true for our children and for future generations.
Celebrating the life and achievements of Dr. Martin Luther King is very important to me. We need to understand his campaign to end racial injustice so that we can both reflect and celebrate on the accomplishments and, very importantly, take a moment to understand what work needs to be done to further this work. We know that there are still injustices and inequality in the world. Reflecting on Dr. Martin Luther King Day motivates me to continue the work and to have an impact on making this a better place for everyone.
Greetings, community. I am Dr. Bobby Hayes Goodrum, Assistant Superintendent for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Farmington Public Schools. I am also the incoming Interim Superintendent. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the celebration of his legacy are extremely important to me personally, for our local community, and for society as a whole. As a Black woman living in America, I know that I would not be where I am today if it were not for the courageous and tireless efforts of Dr. King and every single person who participated in the fight to end racial inequality. Every year on MLK Day, I reflect not only on how far we have come, but also how far we have yet to go to ensure that every person receives equal treatment regardless of their personal or social identities. Dr. King teaches us the importance of love and hope and the need to embrace the humanity in one another. As he says, we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. We have a dynamic and diverse community, and it is each of our responsibility to ensure that all of us are able to grow and flourish. We are better together. I would like to leave you with two additional MLK quotes that spoke to me today. The first is that it is not the words of our enemies we will remember, but the silence of our friends. And finally, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I thank you, and I leave you in love and peace.
Happy Martin Luther King Day. This is Bob Maxfield. I was superintendent of the Farmington School District from 1994 to 2005, and during that time, I was honored to work with the Multicultural, Multiracial Community Council. fact, it was about a year ago that I had a chance to reminisce about those days when I had lunch with Karen Bolson and Jim Hall, who were then the co-chairs of MCMR. I was particularly pleased that Tom Shortliff let me know that MCR continues to lead the community's observation of Martin Luther King Day. I can't think of a more significant time for this to be happening, a time when the pandemic has revealed many, many racial disparities, and as recently as a few weeks ago, an armed insurrection in the Capitol revealed even more of the hate and the racism that pervades this country. So I urge you, the community, to continue to rally behind MCMR, to continue to build on the strengths of the past, and to look for ways to make sure that every citizen of Farmington and Farmington Hills is accepted and is able to live up to the high standards that were articulated best by Dr. Martin Luther King.
Hi, my name is Tangi Grant. I am a past co-chair of the Multicultural, Multiracial Community Council of Farmington Hills. Based on the current climate of events happening in our nation today, and in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I would like to recite 3 of his quotes. The first one is, "I have before us the glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love in the veins of our civilization." The second one is a very popular one that most of us know, but I do believe that it's appropriate. "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Farmington Hills, let's continue to be the example communities when we're in the workplace, school grounds, at home, in churches, or in meetings, that we honor the commandment of love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor is not just meaning the neighbor next door to you. It means your community. It means your world. As Dr. Martin Luther King so wanted for our United States of America. The last one, I wasn't too familiar with this one, but it's very, very key in our trying times right now. It reads, in his quote, is love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Let's meditate on that, and hopefully we can spread love around our world. Thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I honor and salute you.
For more than 25 years, the Multicultural, Multiracial Community Council of Farmington and Farmington Hills has collaborated in events commemorating Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 2020 was a long, tense, and anxious year, a year filled with sadness, anger, and isolation as we awaken to all that unites us and much of what still divides us as citizens and community members. Each of us are capable of growth and change. It is Marian Wright Edelman who reminds us that we must not, in trying to think about how we can make a big difference, ignore the small, daily differences we can make, which, over time, add up to big differences that we often cannot foresee. Thank you to the Farmington Community Library and to you for joining us.